Now, let's draw our focus to the delicate balancing act of preserving peace in Europe post 1815. The vision was clear: create strong buffers around France to prevent any future continental dominance. Belgium and Holland were merged into a unified buffer state to the north. To the northwest of Italy, Piedmont was fortified with Nice and Genoa. Out west, the strategic restoration and strengthening of the Swiss Confederation, now consisting of 22 cantons, further sealed France's borders securely. However, not all plans sailed smoothly. The risk of overpowering was evident, especially with Russia potentially becoming a dominant threat given its military might and territorial gains. A split among the Allies over their concerns on Prussia's potential overextension led to secret alliances involving Britain, Austria, and even France, knitting a safety net in case conflict flared up once again. As time handed down its judgment, the Vienna settlement's legacy stirred mixed reactions. Some dubbed the ensuing period until 1854 as the 40 Years' Peace, appreciating the settlement for managing to suppress major grievances. Yet, it wasn't just the diplomacy of Metternich or the distraction of post-war exhaustion and internal threats that kept peace. A reshuffle of this scale had complex ripples. Interestingly, the settlement was not without its critics, who accused those at Vienna of bartering the happiness of millions. They argued that the diplomats were painfully out of touch with burgeoning ideas of nationalism and democracy that were simmering beneath the surface. Critics pointed out that these diplomats regarded emerging liberal and nationalist movements as mere terrorism or fanaticism, oblivious to the groundswell of change they predicted. Here's a thought to ponder. In the intricate dance of diplomacy and territorial adjustments, were the peace architects of Vienna truly visionaries? Or were they just temporary stewards of a fragile peace, setting the stage for the tumult that would follow decades later? Let's keep going, as this narrative unfolds further, unveiling what history has to say about the seeds they sowed. As we dive deeper into the complexities of early 19th century Europe, the figure of Metternich emerges more distinctly, a man who famously denied having a system, yet whose influence weaved a complex tapestry across the continent. His approach to stifling revolutionary flames can be separated into two primary categories: direct and indirect intervention. Let's explore these distinct but intertwined strategies. Direct intervention was Metternich's more hands-on approach. In some territories, such as Italy, he could exert control straightforwardly because of Austria's strong presence in Lombardy and Venetia. Meanwhile, in Germany, he could manipulate outcomes via the Diet of the German Confederation. This allowed him direct influence, acting as a sort of puppeteer, pulling the strings of political change where he could reach. However, the reality of Austria's own struggles, financial and otherwise, meant that Metternich had to often resort to indirect methods. Here's something concrete. Between 1815 and 1848, a staggering one-third of Austria's income was dedicated to servicing its massive debts. This financial strain rendered Austria incapable of deploying its troops everywhere. Instead, Metternich leveraged the Congress system to use other states to maintain control and suppress revolutionary activities across Europe, essentially outsourcing enforcement by capitalizing on the strength of allies under the guise of maintaining collective peace. This brings us to the intriguing Congress system, which was essentially Metternich's playbook for collaborative European governance. After the Napoleonic Wars, there was a strong sentiment towards maintaining the hard-won peace through continued cooperation among the major powers. This was crystallized in two significant documents: the Quadruple Alliance and the Holy Alliance. The Quadruple Alliance, comprising Austria, Russia, Britain, and Prussia, was an agreement first forged to exclude the Bonaparte dynasty from France. Following Napoleon's nearly successful return during the Hundred Days, the alliance was extended for another 20 years as a safeguard. Intriguingly, it also established a framework for regular congresses where representatives would discuss the maintenance of peace and the general prosperity of European states. Now, contrast this with the Holy Alliance, a product of the mystical inclinations of Tsar Alexander, influenced by the German Baroness von Trudner. This pact was somewhat mystically inclined and aimed to renew the old Christian unity across Europe. Its ambition was broad, urging rulers to act as benevolent father figures to their citizens. Interestingly, major European figures such as Castlereagh dismissed it as nonsensical, and even Metternich himself described it as a loud sounding nothing. Despite these criticisms, it served as a useful tool for Metternich to forge a sense of unity among Europe's absolutist rulers. Lastly, let's look at the legacy of these systems through the concert of Europe. Between 1815 and 1822, a series of congresses were held that weren't just bureaucratic gatherings but were crucial in shaping the diplomatic landscape of the continent. These meetings, although initially aimed at stability, ironically also set the stage for the uprisings in the 1820s and the 1830-1 revolutions. It turns out that the repressive measures touted as necessary for peace were the very sparks that ignited revolutionary fervor across nations striving for more independence and autonomy. Interestingly, right, how strategies meant to smother flames of dissent sometimes fueled them further. As we've seen, Metternich's approach wasn't just about quelling revolutions, it was about trying to control a rapidly evolving political landscape using a mixture of direct pressure and diplomatic maneuvering. His era shows us the complexities of maintaining power in a world where new ideas about governance were emerging, and the traditional empire was being challenged at every turn. Let's keep going as we delve further into these turbulent yet transformative times in European history. In the early 19th century, a series of revolutions swept across Europe and South America that would challenge the foundations of international diplomacy and reshape the political landscape of the time. Among these pivotal events were the congresses convened to address not only post-Napoleonic peace, but also the burgeoning revolutionary spirit that threatened to unseat established royal powers. First, let's travel back to the Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle in 1818. Here, the European powers had gathered primarily to finalize France's reintegration after the Napoleonic Wars, settling the indemnity payments and troop withdrawals. But amidst these discussions, an ambitious Tsar of Russia proposed a radical idea. Can we form an international army to stifle the flames of revolution, especially in the far-off Spanish colonies of South America? This suggestion raised eyebrows and was met with firm resistance from Britain's representative, Castlereagh, who cautioned his colleagues against such intrusive maneuvers. Now, as we step into the year 1820, we find Europe once again on the brink of internal strife. Revolutions burst forth in Spain, Portugal, and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. These tumultuous events brought us to the Congress of Troppau, where the ideological division between two key figures, Britain's Castlereagh and Austria's Metternich, became crystal clear. Castlereagh, a pragmatic statesman, saw these congresses as mechanisms to maintain the status quo established by the Vienna settlement, not tools for quelling revolutionary tides. He believed revolutions were internal issues that should be resolved within the states themselves, fearing that external interventions could disrupt the delicate balance of power in Europe. On the flip side, Metternich, along with his allies Russia and Prussia, embraced a more interventionist stance. Their Troppau Protocol openly supported the idea of intervening in any state where revolutionary movements threatened the stability of neighboring nations. Interestingly, by the time the Congress moved to Laybach in 1821, the debate reached a boiling point. Austria agreed to crush the revolution in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies upon a request from its monarch, reaffirming the Holy Alliance's commitment to supporting established governments against internal revolts. This starkly contrasted with the British viewpoint, which increasingly stood alone in advocating for non-interference. Fast forward to the Congress of Verona in 1822, and the diplomatic landscape had shifted once more. By this time, Castlereagh had tragically taken his own life, and a new British Foreign Secretary, George Canning, stepped into the arena. Canning, known for his liberal leanings and intimate understanding of British trade needs, largely continued Castlereagh's policy of opposing widespread European interventions. However, he brought a fresh, more engaging approach to diplomacy. He had a knack for public speaking and a sharp wit that resonated well with the merchants and businessmen of Liverpool, where he served as a member of parliament. At Verona, the stakes were raised when the French planned to dispatch a massive force of 100,000 troops to quash revolutionary movements in Spain, a move that ultimately went ahead in 1823 with the Congress's blessing. Canning sent the Duke of Wellington to voice Britain's objections, but to no avail. The Congress's approval of the French intervention marked a decisive moment, where the paths of European diplomacy diverged significantly, reflecting broader shifts in political strategies and alliances. As we reflect on these historical congresses, it's fascinating to see how the reverberations of revolutions shaped international relations, the interplay between national and foreign policies, and the philosophical divides that influenced Europe's journey through a turbulent 19th century. What's surprising is how the debates of that era echo in today's political dialogues, reminding us that the roots of many modern policies trace back to these critical moments in history. Let's keep going and delve deeper into how these historical decisions continue to influence our present. That's it for today's episode on Fun Learn Talks, where stories from business, technology, and history keep your curiosity alive. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to follow, rate, or share it with a fellow curious mind. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or connect with us online. I'm Anu, and I'll catch you next time, right here on Fun Learn Talks. Until then, keep learning, keep wondering.